College with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham and Jerry Carter, and we're talking on a Monday afternoon after a very eventful weekend in sports, ACC sports, UVA sports, and Jerry, a lot for us to get into. How are things going for you today?
Well, Chris, I got to think the first thing I've got to acknowledge is everybody knows we're 3,000 miles apart, but today I'm not sure we're not 40 degrees apart as well. I've actually got a light jacket on here on the island today, and I got to believe it's a little warm back there.
Yeah, it's around 90 degrees here still. Now, the good news for our listeners in Virginia and Mid-Atlantic is that the temperatures are going to change dramatically tomorrow and for the rest of the next several days. Low temperatures, I think, Thursday and Friday night here in the 40s. So folks going out to high school football games and maybe even the UVA football game. I haven't looked at the UVA football game is Saturday night with ODU. We may need to be wearing sweatshirts Saturday night for ODU. But, yeah, right now, last little bit of summer. And, it's one of those things where when it's 9 degrees in July, you're used to it. But when it's 90 in September, it's just like, enough of this. Let's just move on. And that's kind of where we all are right now on this side of the Continental Divide.
Well, Chris, I got to start out, and anybody that listens to you and I talk on a regular basis knows I go out in search of a feel-good story. And we've got one today. And again, I love the man to death, love his father. Tony Bennett today. I don't know when this decision was made, but the story breaks today, at least on my end of the world, today, that when UVA sat down with Tony to give Tony some more money, and him and his wife got together, had a conversation, he politely declined. And I tried to think back in history. I've got Tom Brady and Peyton Manning as players doing similar things. But, Chris, I can't think of another time that a coach did this and then to the point said, if you can take it and use it someplace else in the athletic department or on my staff, feel free to do that. We feel pretty good about where we're at. What were you thinking when you read that article, I'm assuming earlier today?
Well, I even wrote the article as well. The UVA sent something out early this morning, about 9 o'clock or so Eastern time, and tipped us off to this, and when we were able to get in on the story. It's one of those things. Tony Bennett, in a couple years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago after the Elite Eight appearance, was also offered a raise and also now more quietly pushed that raise onto his assistants. This time, the folks at UVA decided to tout it more. That year we had to kind of dig that up ourselves. And so, yeah, the news was shared with us this morning, and with all due respect to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and some others in the NFL, and maybe you've seen elsewhere in pro sports who've either turned down money or turned down more money. Those guys are players in sports that have salary caps, and they're not doing so necessarily because they're just great of heart. They're doing it so that they can remain more competitive. If Tom Brady turns down a few million more dollars. In his case, this most recent time, and actually, and a couple times recently as well for him, he's been given a bigger signing bonus that kind of goes in a different way with a salary cap. He still gets the money, is the bottom line. It just doesn't count the same way in NFL terms for the salary cap. This isn't Tony Bennett turning down money and he's going to get it some other way. He's turning down money. And in fact, he's also giving money. He's committing money of his own personal nature, $500,000 of the Bennett's money, his money, his wife Laurel, towards the development of a career development program for former and current UVA and future UVA basketball players. So not only, Jerry, is he turning down more money, he's giving up some money, a substantial amount of money, for the betterment of UVA basketball and players in the future. So, yeah, this is one, and I'll say, looking at just my wife and my personal Facebook and Twitter, this story's blown up. I mean, and people are sharing it all over, from the UVA fan base, because it means a lot. And it is so rare. I was on the phone today with another, just on unrelated topic with another UVA beat writer, and the first thing he said was, before he even said hi, was, "Can you believe Tony Bennett?" And no, I can't believe Tony Bennett, but accept that I can. That's the guy that we've come to know. So, yeah, what a big story, and what a feel-good story for sports. Everybody else wants more money, and Tony Bennett wants the same, and even giving more money out of his own pocket. So in effect, he wants less. He says he's doing well, and why do I need more money? Let's give it to some other people. That is so rare, not just in sports, but in general in this day and age.
Well, especially, Chris, when you look at the level of where the person is coming from. I mean, you have all sorts of people, the Bill Gates in the world, the Paul Allens, the types of people, the Warren Buffetts, people with $1 gazillion saying, "Here, I have enough, let me start giving it back." Well, Tony Bennett and his wife are, I'm pretty sure, doing well. They're not in a different stratosphere, and that just adds another layer to the story. Again, if somebody came out and we talked about on our last podcast, someone like, Pickens from, Oklahoma State, the booster, you're talking about somebody, with all the money in the world. This was such a good story that a lot of times, Chris, something will break in the way of UVA. I might not hear about it for 2 or 3 days if I'm not having a conversation with you. This one here, I've already read 4 articles, including one attributed to Sports Illustrated. This really is setting, and it comes at a good time. It comes at a good time because the UVA, we can now, instead of just talking about Friday and Saturday, we can talk about the Sunday and Monday. And I think it really is the part of it, at least speaking for myself, the part of it that keeps it so close to the schools. The 2 schools of, in my case, of UVA and Duke, talking about the things that are done, the way that it's done, the unprecedented methods that are shown. And I just couldn't think of a better topic to open with today after reading these stories than saying kudos to Tony Bennett, kudos to Dick Bennett for raising Tony Bennett. And I'll even go back to the end of our last podcast and say thank you to Dave Lato one more time, as you did the other day.
And for folks who are wondering about how much money are we talking about here, we don't know exactly. UVA didn't report that today. But just for some context here, I guess. Now, Tony already is, according to USA Today, he's already the 4th highest paid coach in all of college basketball. He makes, as of their most recent figures, which they're not exactly current, if you want to say. Current would be right this second. We have to kind of wait when we do these kind of reports for IRS 990s to be filed. Athletics departments are technically nonprofits, which is a joke, but they are. And so these are from a couple years ago still. But as of a couple years ago, Tony Bennett was the 4th highest paid coach, $4.1 million a year. That's a lot of money. The highest paid coach is John Calipari, $9.2 million a year. So somewhere between 4.1 and 9.2 is what a guy with a national championship who's 49 years old presumably will be at UVA for 15 or 20 more years. Coach K also in the $9 million range. The 3rd highest paid coach, Tom Izzo, is just ahead of Tony at $4.157 million. So presumably his raise was going to get him closer to Coach K and Coach Calipari, and he said, "Nah, I'm good." And there's a $5 million chasm between him and those 2 coaches. Again, I don't know that UVA was going to make up all of that, but they were going to make up some of it. And he said, "No, use it in some other way, a better way than giving me more money."
Absolutely. Now, Chris, I'm going to ask you, we led up to Friday's events and Saturday's events, and I know that you went through the stuff from Friday night and everybody that you talked to. Now that you had a weekend to reflect on it, is there anything that stuck out about the banner dropping on Friday night that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
One thing about that banner is it's huge. I don't know if you weren't there on Friday night, and you maybe saw pictures or you saw video. I don't know that it does justice. Nothing you see there will have done justice in terms of how big that banner is. Folks are used to seeing banners all over the place, I guess. Especially at JPJ, they've got a standard kind of looking for a banner. The banners for Sweet 16s and Elite 8s and whatever. This is, I'm guessing, I'm 4 times the size of that banner. And so just that's the first thing that sticks out is just how, the way where they hung it above the basket that's in front of the sort of that brick section. When you first walk into JPJ, and you walk and you can look out at the court, the first thing you'll see is this massive banner. Another thing then, so we got to talk before the event with Coach Bennett, with Ty Jerome, and also with Kyle Guy. I got to talk with them individually before the event. And, they were back. And DeAndre Hunter, his plane was delayed, so he got back eventually. His plane was diverted. There was some bad weather in Charlottesville Friday night. So we didn't get to talk with him ahead of time, but just the fact that those guys came back and actually stayed the weekend. They were also at the football game Saturday night for a special moment at the end of the first quarter, got honored on the field. The whole team did, including the alums who were back. And so, they made a weekend of it, which is pretty cool. And Kyle Guy being Kyle Guy, he wore a UVA football jersey to that. The other two guys, Ty and DeAndre, interesting. I'll point this out. They both wore NBA jerseys. So my wife's first question to me, she texted me during the game. She's at the game and says, why isn't Kyle wearing his NBA jersey? I said, well, because neither of the other two guys were wearing their NBA jerseys either. DeAndre Hunter was wearing a Ty Jerome Phoenix Suns jersey, and Ty Jerome was wearing a DeAndre Hunter Atlanta Hawks jersey. So that tells you how close those guys are. Talking with them before, one of the questions that we asked of Kyle Guy, would you have come back if you had not won the championship last year? He said, I might have, but he made the right decision. And Ty talked about how the national championship really hasn't sunk in for him yet. It's been I guess we're 5 months past now the date of winning the championship. But he said it really hasn't sunk in because it was a whirlwind for him. He declared for the draft. He had to get ready for the draft. Then he got drafted. Now he's in the getting ready for the NBA. And so it hasn't sunk in yet, and maybe, this weekend helped it sink in a bit. But the outpouring of support, there were close to 10,000 people at the event on Friday night. A lot of tears as that banner was raised, and the ceremonies. Tony Bennett talked, and we learned one thing new, and I know a lot of us wrote about it. I know I did. It was something that. As much as we did work for behind-the-scenes stuff for our book, Team of Destiny, this is one I would have loved to have had for that book, but he didn't reveal to anyone until Friday night. Tony talked about how, everybody talked about emotions as this run was going on at the end of it, looking back. But Tony being Tony, he's a very closely guarded man, but he admitted at the event Friday night that on the night of the semifinal game, the Final Four game, the win over Auburn, he said he joked that his wife and his mother were at the bar in the hotel that they stayed in, the team hotel there in downtown Minneapolis. He said they were drinking shots with each other because they were trying to come down from the high of winning that game. And so Tony said he was in the hotel room by himself, and he said he sat on the bed and broke down in tears. And he said what that was the release of all the pressure. And I don't know that he would have admitted, maybe even to himself, but certainly to the rest of us, that pressure that had been written about a lot in the years leading up to that Saturday night in Minneapolis of, you're a great coach, but you've never been to a Final Four. Now you're in a Final Four. Now you've won that game. Now you're playing in a championship game in 2 nights. He was stoic. He made it a point after the UMBC game. There are worse things than this. There's a lot of bad things in the world. There are a lot of worse things to happen to people than losing a basketball game. But then he's in tears in a hotel room by himself as he realizes he's there. He's in a championship game. And he said how cool it was on Sunday then that there were still only 2 teams practicing, and his was one of the 2 teams. And so that's something that none of us knew. But yes, as much as Tony deflects the idea that sports are important, of course, he even talked with us before the game, before the event Friday night, about he put the UMBC loss in context, and only Tony would do this, of the tragedies in the Bahamas. The UMBC loss was a tragedy in a basketball sense. There are real life tragedies out there. He pointed that out, But yeah, Saturday night after Auburn, he's talking about, man, I broke down in tears, and I didn't expect that. And so that was a window into Tony Bennett that I don't think any of us, those of us who've been talking to him for 10 years, had ever seen. Very interesting to learn that.
A couple of other things while we're still talking about Tony Bennett, and it's always an enjoyable conversation. Chris, I had a chance to watch a special they did on the ACC network where they had a round table of coaches that had recently won national championships. And they did a nice job of having separate interviews with Roy and Coach K. But they had Dabo and Tony and Boeheim and McGraw from Notre Dame, and they're sitting there and they're telling stories and talking about what it was to win the championship. And an interesting couple of things came out of there for me. One was, and this was not known to me, that once he made it to the Final Four, Dabo Swinney actually got a hold of Tony. He had to get his number. He didn't have his number handy. He had to go through the commissioner's office. He got a hold of Tony and said, "Tony, I just want you to know that you're going to win the national championship this weekend." And they went through the exchange and the various things and what that meant to Tony. And the other one came directly from Tony when he was talking about the UMBC loss and the fact that the two people that stepped up in front of it immediately were Boeheim and Coach K. And they talked about how well he handled that and that it was gonna pay off in the future. And of course, Tony said it a little bit more elegantly than me, but I thought it was a nice situation in the fact that, again, I have multiple ties to Tony, starting from him being out here, and but I love the man to death, and I just, all of these things that are happening, they just couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I guess that's my final thought on the process.
Well, I'll throw in about the Dabo Swinney connection. Tony talked a lot during Final Four weekend, and then, of course, after the championship, about how just by chance, UVA basketball played at Clemson this year on a Saturday, basically a noon tip, or just after noon tip down in South Carolina. On the day that Clemson was having a parade and ceremony marking the football national championship. That game was in middle of January, and it just happened that UVA was in town down in Clemson for that. And so the team leaves the hotel. The UVA team leaves the hotel. They're on their bus driving past, and Tony said he actually said out loud to his team as they were driving past, "Wouldn't it be neat if we had one of these in Charlottesville in a couple of months?" And so you fast forward a couple of months, they're having it. He told that story really well in front of the group at Scott Stadium at that event where UVA had their celebration to mark the national championship. But one of those little quirks, little happenstances of life where you're just in a bus driving by a national championship celebration, and it's one of those things you use for motivation. He told another story that I thought was interesting. I mean, there's so many, and there was so many that it was hard to write them all into stories. And I don't think I wrote this into a story, but he talked about how back in 2015, his team had just the year before won its first ACC tournament championship since the Terry Holland era back in the 70s. And so he said to help mark the occasion, he had basically a plaque made up with all the names of the people, not just the players, but players, trainers, managers, support staff, who he called the foundation of UVA basketball. And they actually buried that into, and I want to say, I said 2015. They did this in 2018, I guess, before the 2018-2019 season, last season. And had all those names put, and then they buried it under center court at JPJ. And he said, from time to time when they were playing home games this year, he would remind the guys, hey, you're the foundation of UVA basketball. You're such the foundation that you're here under the court. And he said he was on the Sunday between the two games, between the Auburn and the Texas Tech games in the Final Four. He said after practice was over, gathers a team for the last words before he sends them off on Sunday night. and says, okay, your names aren't under this center court, but they are back in Charlottesville, and you're the foundation of this program. And it's just one of those things. Again, I think it's neat, when you learn what motivational techniques coaches use. But this speaks to a guy who gets it, that it's not about him, it's about them, about everybody in the program. And it's kind of neat to learn, just what he and that group think of each other, and how they kind of put into place everything they believe in terms of building a program.
One final basketball note, and this one goes back to Roy, and they asked each one of the coaches, what was the one criticism that you held on to? What was the one thing that somebody said to you that you still hang on to today? And real quick, I'll sneak in that Dabo said his is that ESPN ranked him a D+ higher, and he said I was happy to get the plus. But Roy went to the one, and this has always been a thing for Roy and Coach K. Roy said that people made fun of me for crying when we lost the last game of the year, and he says they don't have any idea how much these players mean to me, how much my program means to me. And then he actually challenged the person that wrote the story. He goes, come say it to my face. And you're sitting there and you see these people that have done this for a long time at a high level of success. And you understand how much it actually means to them. It's just an unbelievable thought process. And it's great that it happened. They can't take it back. And that big old banner will be there for a long time. Chris, I didn't think we could possibly get this far into the podcast before asking the question, have you calmed down from the fourth quarter of the football game?
Yeah, and I'll segue myself. I wanted to tell one more basketball story, but it does talk about football in a way. I'll start with the basketball part. Part of the ceremony Friday night was a nice video put together by Virginia Sports TV with clips from Tony Bennett's introductory press conference in 2009 when he was hired at UVA, and he looked like he was 12 years old. He was so young looking. He had, he looked very boyish. Okay, so and they interspersed that with highlights of this championship run. Okay, so he was, the things he was saying about building a program. You can't win a national championship unless you have pillars for success and this kind of thing. And Tony gets up and he says, "Boy," the first thing he says is, "Boy, I had a full head of hair without a single gray." And he said, "Where's Justin Anderson? Justin Anderson, I just want you to know you're the source of every single one of these gray hairs." And so that brought, of course, a lot of laughs from the crowd. And I'll bring that then to Saturday night. As the game's over, and this, of course, has nothing to do with the game, but it does in a sense. One of the fans at the game was Justin Anderson. He stayed in town, too, for the weekend. So my wife and her friend Jody were waiting for me. I'm sitting up in the press box trying to finish the story, and we all rode over there together, of course, and we're riding back home together. And my wife is waiting outside the main gate, the gate where students enter, and just waiting, looking at her phone, everything else. And she hears a young man's voice saying, "Hey, look at me. I'm going to throw it like Bryce Perkins." And she, of course, looks back and she's thinking, who is this arrogant SOB thinking he can throw like Bryce Perkins? And she said it was a rather large man playing with a group of kids, a group of maybe 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. It was Justin Anderson playing football at midnight after the UVA Florida State game, throwing the ball with a bunch of 10 or 12-year-old kids. That's the man who put the gray hairs on, Tony said. So I had to tell that story because I might write a column on that. I don't know if there's enough material there for an entire column, but that's a Justin Anderson type story. So as far as me, yes, Jerry, I think I've finally calmed down. Let me tell you this, and then we can talk more about the actual football game. I'm someone who I'm a runner. I'm a distance runner. I run every day. I run 40 miles a week. As a result of that, I've got a really good resting heart rate, among other things. And I've got an Apple Watch that tells me, I can look any time and see what my resting heart rate is. And usually it's between 46 and 50. That's what, runners have a great resting heart rate, low blood, good blood pressure, everything else. So At one point during the game, I thought, I want to look at my resting heart rate. I got the watch on. Let's see what my resting heart rate is right now in the fourth quarter. 102. That's how much that was. And I'm literally just sitting there like everybody else watching the game. So a person whose normal resting heart rate is 46, that was pretty much me running, Jerry. That's what my running heart rate is. So if you need to know how my emotions were in the fourth quarter and my physical situation was in the fourth quarter, it was as if Chris was running a race. Yeah, that was a pretty intense game.
Well, I'll set it up from my end and then hand it over to you once we get to that point. I'm sitting there and, Duke's kicking at 4 my time and Virginia's at 4:30. So I've got the computer set on the Facebook page, or Lynn's Facebook page. So I'm watching both of the games at the same time, screen over screen. And Duke plays as good of a football game as I've seen them play in 10 seasons. Without a doubt. I'm just so excited. Harris is playing so well. All the freshmen are doing so well. And I'm watching the UVA game, but I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing anything as far as what the announcers are saying. I'm seeing all of the plays. I'm not hearing any of the noise. So the second the Duke game ends, my first thought when I cut the volume up, I go, wow, this game has looked really chippy all night long to me. Just off of eyesight. Again, I'm not hearing what the announcers are saying. And then I watched the drive where Florida State unbelievably commits 3 personal fouls on the same drive. And the 2-point conversion was one of the best 2-point conversions I've ever seen converted. But then my question comes to you is when you're sitting here, because I'm not sure that game didn't end on 3 separate plays, with each one getting a replay from it. Now, again, from my standpoint, each of the calls that they made looked like they were calls that could be made, but I just didn't know what it would be like to be in the stadium and feel like every time you could throw your hands up in celebration that the next flag came down.
Yeah, and Bronco Mendenhall was asked about those plays today. He doesn't want to donate money to charity in a forced nature. When you get fined, that's what ends up happening. So he charitably said there were 2 plays. He said, how did he put it? This way. The game ended. There were 2 other plays on which the game should have ended. But they didn't. So, yeah, the first one, I mean, I say this a lot about football particularly. You can call holding on every play on an offensive lineman. You can call holding on every play. If you look at the letter of the rule book, there is, and I'm not casting aspersions on offensive linemen. You can call holding on every play. There's one of those 5 guys blocking, maybe a running back. There's somebody who is textbook holding. If you wanted to, on almost every pass play, you could call pass interference. That is the pass interference that was called on the 4th and 15. If you want to call it, you can call it. Was the cornerback? I think it was Nick Grant. Was he there early? I don't know. I thought he was there right on time. If you're going to call that pass interference, though, you've got to call it every time there is contact that is simultaneous with the ball getting there, and so we would never get done with the game if that was the case. You can also call. I mean, how many times do you watch a replay, or if you're in the stadium and you watch the quarterback, don't watch where the ball goes after he throws it, where a quarterback is hit by a defensive lineman or a linebacker or sometimes a defensive back blitzing, who is completing his tackle after a throw is made, but not late, not harboring it late. That's the call on Jordan Mack. Jordan Mack was running unfettered on an A-gap blitz through the line. He sees James Blackman trying to get rid of the ball. He jumps up in the air to try to knock the pass down. He lands. He makes contact. It was not egregious contact. He makes some contact. Blackman does what a Blackman's supposed to do. He flops. And a penalty's called on a 4th and 5. So the second time that happens. Now, in between all that, Bronco Mendenhall, who swears today, I say swears, that's an interesting word to say, considering he promises he did not use profanity to get that 15-yard unsportsmanlike. He says he does not use profanity. He says he was out on the field, and he said that I can't believe you made that call. Now, I say this about that. In a baseball game, when a hitter or a pitcher is arguing the strike zone. And does so in a way that is visible to the fans. The hitter or the pitcher, you're kind of like, it's kind of like being on the stage in a theater. You're in a spotlight. People see you. In a basketball game, if a coach is yelling at an official and does so in an egregious way, and we've all seen it, it's right there in front of everybody. That's what you're looking at. In a football game and sidelines, anybody who's ever, like me, I've fortunately or unfortunately in some cases walked a lot of football sidelines in years past. Don't do it anymore. But I'll be charitable and say not a lot of positive things are said when you're on a football sideline, or not a lot of things I guess you'd repeat in mixed company are said on a football sideline. You don't often, which is to say you very rarely see a flag thrown for a coach saying something to an official, because you as a fan in a 60,000-seat stadium don't see what's being said. You don't even know he's showing him up if he's showing him up. When that flag was thrown Saturday night, the sports writers on both sides of me, I said, don't worry about it. It's a sideline warning, because we see that all the time. Sideline warning. There's a flag thrown, and you'll see the lead official, the referee, say, oh, sideline warning on UVA. And then the next time you get a flag. There was never a sideline warning to either side in that game Saturday night. On 4th and 15, there's a bang-bang pass interference called, and then a 15-yard penalty without a sideline warning gives Florida State 30 yards of field position in a game that they needed they needed a touchdown to tie the game. I would love to hear from the ACC today that those officials have been reprimanded in some way for trying to decide the outcome of the game without letting the teams decide the outcome of the game. To me, I'm not Bronco Mendenhall. They're not going to fine me for saying that. That crew should be suspended for a game, if not for the entire season, for game mismanagement. That's how deep that goes to me as far as that goes. Virginia still won the game. Congratulations. They should not have been put in that position.
Well, Chris, not to feel like we're done with the UVA game, but just on that same note, I was noticing, we talked on Friday about how excited I was to watch the Wake Carolina game. The end of the Wake Carolina game was a situation to where Carolina had a chance to win the game. Their guy steps out of bounds with clearly 1 second on the clock. The referee at the plate is holding up a finger, saying 1 second. Mac Brown's excited because he thinks he gets one more play. It could have been a 40-yard Hail Mary. But he looks up, and the entire referee squad has ran into the locker room. Now, the ACC comes back and says, yeah, that's our bad.
Yeah.
That's our bad. They apologize. Even worse. In that game, Carolina would have had to convert a 40-yard Hail Mary. So let's take a look at the Michigan State-Arizona State game. The last play of the game, Michigan State's down 3. They kick a field goal. They tie the game. It's ruled that they had 12 men on the field. So the kick comes off. They push the guy 5 yards back, and he misses the next kick. Well, one of the Arizona State players got a running start, leaped the line, and ended up landing on top of somebody from Michigan State. Wasn't called. The game ends. The Pac-12 then has to apologize. Yeah, we missed that one. That would have been a 15-yard penalty, and the next kick would have been basically an extra point. So, again, this will always be a sensitive subject for me all the way back to the Duke-Miami game, which I'll never get over.
Yeah.
But what can you do in these situations? Thankfully, as you said, Virginia won the game. So it wasn't like it's a lost season. And I'm not a Michigan State football fan, but they had pretty big dreams.
Yeah.
They were a ranked team. They're talking about winning the Big Ten. They're talking about playoffs possibly. So what is a remedy to fix these types of situations, or is there one?
And what's odd is that we have instant replay. And in the situation of the Carolina Wake game, they didn't use it. In the situation of the Michigan State game, they didn't use it. And then yet, I mean, I'll point this out too. This was so frustrating to sit in the stadium Saturday night and see this. I don't have an exact number. I was not, writing notes down about how many times the game went to instant replay. It felt to me like there were 8 to 10 instances where our game officials in the UVA Florida State game went to instant replay. I don't know. I don't know. UVA forced the one. Bronco, when he got the unsportsmanlike penalty, or unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, used a timeout to actually request a replay because it did look, at least originally, the ball came out of James Blackman's hands on that pass, and it fluttered an awful lot. And so it looked like it could have been tipped at the line of scrimmage. Turns out it wasn't. So that was one that was requested. The others weren't requested. The others were just the automatic. College football loves to slow the game down and look at instant replays. And in none of those instances, and I'm guessing again 8 to 10 times, in none of those instances did the call actually lead to a reversal. And so, but what happens is when you're in the stadium, you see this. When you're at home, you just see they go to commercial break. But in the stadium, as soon as they go to an instant replay review, the guy who wears the red shirt that everybody in the stadium hates, because when he comes out on the field, it means we're stopping. And now, at least at UVA games, I'm not sure if this is the case elsewhere, but I assume it is. That guy in the red shirt has to carry out. He carries out this long pole with a clock on it. A clock that has like a digital clock that has the display that's very visible to 60,000 people in a stadium, and it starts at 3 minutes. So as soon as there's an instant replay call to the booth, he walks out. I'm in the press box. So there's TVs above me. We don't get to hear them, but we get to see them. And they go to commercial break. So every instant replay review leads to a commercial break. And so we have 8 to 10 of them that lead to no reversals for 3-minute commercial breaks. And then at the end of those two games you're talking about, Jerry, they don't even use them. And game results might be changed. Now, yeah, the Michigan State kids got to make the field goal. Then it goes to overtime. Who knows who wins? Carolina gets the ball at the 40-yard line. They have to complete a Hail Mary. That's asking a lot. But there's one play left. Maybe they win. Maybe they don't win. So, but still, come on. If you're going to have this stupid system in place, at least use it. And also, don't use it quite as much as we do. I would love to see us go back to an NFL system where you have to challenge a play instead of every single play going to a review. It's killing the game. And when you're sitting in a stadium especially, I don't know what it's like on TV, and it's probably similar on TV, but when you're sitting in a stadium and they go to that 3-minute review, it just kills everything about going to the game. You don't want to go to the game anymore because we were there for 3.5 hours the other night. It's ridiculous.
First, I'm going to add one more note, and then we'll move on past the refereeing. But I felt like at the end of the Carolina Wake game, the fact that the entire officiating crew ran off the field just sends a bad message.
It does, yeah.
Maybe that's what they're instructed to do, and if so, that's on me. But I'm sitting there, and again, with Mac Brown, it's a good story, and they were dead in the water for 3 quarters, and the amount of comeback that they did, and you're just sitting there, and again, the Duke Miami game will be in my head forever, and the apology doesn't help. The apology after the fact doesn't help, and I'm a little bummed for North Carolina, but I'm greatly disappointed for Michigan State, and thankfully UVA dodged it. But you're talking about 3 games, and those were the 3 games I was watching.
Yeah.
And that doesn't say how many times it's happening. And so there's something that needs to be addressed, and we'll figure out how to address it. But the game itself, on TV they were announcing the crowd at just under 60. Uh-huh. You talked about the atmosphere a little bit. You got ODU ahead. I got a 2-part question for you. One, your thoughts on ODU. The second question is, as a UVA fan, let's not be a media representative for a minute. As a UVA fan, you've got Notre Dame, Georgia this weekend between the hedges. Who are you pulling for?
Pulling for? I guess, the UVA fans should be pulling for Notre Dame so that, presume UVA does what it's supposed to do this weekend with ODU, and by God, they better. The fan talking there now. You want Notre Dame ranked top 10. And I don't know that – depending on if they lose to Georgia, if they lose by 1 point, they're still top 10 probably because Georgia's number 3, and, they're the third wheel in that Clemson, Alabama that I think that there's 3 great teams in college football. I think you start at number 4, and you already have jumped off one cliff to get to number 4. So Uh, if Notre Dame beats Georgia, then I have to change that, and I have to say there are 4 good teams or great teams in college football, whatever. The UVA fan would love Notre Dame to win that game just because you want to go into South Bend with 2 4-0 teams. Virginia moved up to 21 this week. Presumably you beat ODU, you're at least there, if not a little higher, maybe 20 or inside the top 20 next week. And so from a just a rating standpoint or a excitement standpoint, you want 2 undefeated teams. You want 1 top 10, 1 top 20, just because we haven't played a game like that in a long time. So that's what you want there. And as far as ODU is concerned, I watched them on TV when they played Virginia Tech a couple weeks ago. Virginia's a 30-point favorite going into this one. Tech was a 27 or 28-point favorite going into that one, and only beat ODU by 2 touchdowns in a game that was a 1-touchdown game going into the fourth quarter. So that said, then Virginia Tech beat Furman by a touchdown this past weekend. So you might have to wonder if that was more a factor of Virginia Tech being completely overrated by Vegas and maybe ODU playing the way it was supposed to play against a team that maybe isn't as good as Vegas thought. But you got to go out and beat ODU. We know they beat Tech last year. They played Tech tough this year. So no overlooking anybody. You got to go out and beat ODU Saturday night.
Well, Chris, the 4th refereeing call and the rest of the ACC breakdown kind of ties together in this next one. And Mike Barber is somebody I think both of us are familiar with. He was actually sent out a message. I don't know if you saw the onside kick that Furman executed against Virginia Tech, but it was one of the best onside kicks I've seen. The ball actually, you're thinking about bend it like Beckham. The ball actually makes a complete left turn, perfectly executed. Furman has the ball, and they throw a flag away from the play, saying that Furman running into a Virginia Tech player is against the rules, and they marked the penalty off, and they made them kick over again. And Barber tweets out, he goes, there's some home cooking there. My first question is, did you see the play? And if you did, was it a valid call?
Saw the play, and what I'll point out too is that there was actually a replay that led to that flag being called, at least as far as from what I recall from the game. And that's one of those things where replay being instituted for a penalty like that. I mean, you got to get the call right. So that's I want to see them get the call right. I don't know that I don't know that to me there was enough there to make that call. It felt like a bang bang call even making it, and it's kind of like I think this is something that needs to be changed about replay, not specific to this play, but in general. And I've heard this. This isn't an original thought on my part. I heard this during a discussion in another game, and it might have even been a baseball game this year where I heard this. But you often hear that there's a distinction between the call is upheld, call is confirmed, or the call plays as is as stands, or whatever the case may be. And what that implies is that as stands, we don't have evidence to overturn the original call, and then confirmed is, we see that that happens, or of course you reverse the call and say it was wrong. And what was suggested, and I totally think should be the case, is not have that system anymore, not have the call stands because we don't have evidence to overturn it. I think when you're making a call, when you look at a replay, you should actually go by a standard of, let's not even worry about what the original call is. Let's make the call now. We can see it. And if there's no 3 results anymore in instant replay. There's 2 results. Either we leave it or we change it. And there's no third of, well, we don't have enough. You have enough. You have what you see. Officials who are making a call live during a game, baseball umpire, basketball referee, football referee or official, they don't get to say, well, there's just not enough information, I can't make a call. You can't do that. You got to make a call one way or the other. I think replay officials should be held to that same standard. If that's the case, and the official in the replay booth said that was illegal, then it's illegal. But by the current standards, that should have been left as stands. And if that was the case, then it would have been Furman ball. Again, you have a minute and 50 to go. You still got to drive the field, score a touchdown, kick an extra point. But I felt like that was kind of that opportunity was taken away from Furman on Saturday.
Absolutely. And while Carolina would have only had one play, one Hail Mary play, Furman would have had an opportunity to go down the field. But that brings me to the bigger question. Friday night while you were over in Charlottesville, I got to watch 2 football games. The first one was highly entertaining at the end. The Boston College-Kansas game was dumbfounding from kickoff to final buzzer. It was a beatdown of unprecedented. Yeah, you have to go back to the last time Kansas won a road game against a Power 5 school. And to say that, it would be an exaggeration to say I was in high school, but it was a long time ago. Boston College had a couple of nice wins. They were a heavy favorite. So my question to you is, tell me which one of the losses was most damning to the league this weekend. Was it Boston College at home against Kansas? Was it NC State getting punked by West Virginia? Or was it Citadel over Georgia Tech? I'll give you an option D. Was it Virginia Tech almost to Furman? Which one was the bigger black eye, if you will?
I still would go with Virginia Tech, even though they won, beating Furman by a touchdown, just because, the jury was still out, and probably is still out, I guess I should say, with Virginia Tech, because, a lot of us are still, kind of like with Miami. You look at those programs and say, I don't care that they're struggling. They're still Virginia Tech, and Florida State, too. Now, Florida State loses to Virginia this weekend, so certainly nothing to sneeze at there, but you look at those 3 programs and you say, okay, they're struggling, but they're still Virginia Tech, Miami, Florida State. Come on. They're going to turn it on. They're going to turn it around. Florida State, I'll say this about them. Willie Taggart and his staff, kudos. You guys got your team ready. You played Virginia. You should have beat Virginia. You didn't because Virginia beat you. I mean, you didn't lose that game. I think Florida State lost the Boise State game. They should have lost the Louisiana Monroe game, but they didn't lose this one. Virginia beat them in this one, and there's a distinction there to me. The Virginia Tech is they lost. They have one loss. It's to a team that got punked by Kansas, which now you have to wonder. And then they struggle to beat. Their Virginia Tech's 2-1. They beat ODU by 2 touchdowns. A game that was a 1-score game late. They beat Furman by a score in a game that they had a favorable call to prevent an onside kick being recovered. That is the most tenuous 2-1 in college football right now. Virginia Tech. Go ahead.
You just mentioned something that is really a very, very true statement, where Virginia Tech, Florida State, and Miami are concerned. And one of the things that you're looking at is there were 2 games. One was for me that I was keeping an eye on was Virginia and Florida State, and the other was Duke, Virginia Tech. And I'm sitting there, and again, we talked about it last week, that this is the first time that UVA went into this game as a favorite, and for the most part was thinking they were going to win. I tell you, watching the Duke game yesterday and the Virginia Tech game yesterday, if those 2 teams are on the same field, Duke wins by 3 touchdowns. But they still have to go to Blacksburg and actually perform. I'm just sitting there, so kudos to Virginia for I think they got Florida State's best shot. And it was a situation to where whether having another headset or lack of headset, but another person talking to the team, I don't know, but Florida State played a whole lot better than they had played the previous 2 weeks. Virginia Tech has yet to show us anything in my mind. And again, I always play the game of this game versus that game. Again, they lost to Boston College. We're thinking Boston College is some kind of perennial ACC challenger for Clemson now, and they give up 48 points to Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And then they talked about Virginia Tech only having 4 seniors. That's a number for a basketball team. It's a stunning number for a football team. So it's going to be interesting from that standpoint. But the Citadel Clemson one, Citadel Georgia Tech one was kind of intriguing to me in the fact that I just felt like Georgia Tech struggled with South Florida. But kudos for Citadel for getting that one in. But Chris, we're at the quarter pole of the season, and we have 5 teams in the league at 1-2, and only 3 at 3-0. That being Virginia, Clemson, and Wake Forest. And you've got 5 teams that have lost 2 out of 3 games. And I thought the NC State game, I was stunned by that. I didn't get to watch that one, only following it through highlights, but I felt like West Virginia was in a down year. I felt that one kind of hurt a little bit as well. So it's kind of interesting as to, again, 5 of them at 1-2. My next thought on the football end of things, now that Wake Forest has gotten to 3-0, I've looked at their schedule, because I'm not sure that Wake Forest can't start this season at 7-0. They're not going to, I don't know if they're going to dominate any of the games in front of them, but they've got a chance to be the second team behind Clemson for sure, now that Syracuse has taken a couple of hits in Boston College. I'm just not sure how quickly they bounce back from that kind of a loss at home. And I'm not sure they could have lost to a Power 5 team that would have gotten more people's attention. I mean, some scores can sneak by you. That score, plus the fact that it was on Friday night, it's not sneaking by anybody.
You know, you talk about Wake, and I think of them when you said it the way you just said it. I think of them competing, you know, being the favorite right now for that number 2 spot in the Atlantic Division. In a similar way, I thought about Virginia heading into the season being the preseason favorite in the Coastal. And now because I thought to myself, and I actually wrote some columns of this effect and talked about this on podcast, to the effect that Virginia didn't need to be a championship level team, division championship level team this year necessarily to win the Coastal, if that makes any sense. And the reason I say that is the rest of the Coastal was so down, in my opinion. You know, if you're Virginia Tech, you're coming off your first losing season in 25 years. You know, Duke loses a lot, including its starting quarterback. Miami had a change of coach. Georgia Tech changes its whole offensive system. I mean, Carolina changes coach. And so you go up and down and Pitt with all the losses on offensive line. It was sort of like, I kept using the analogy of the Allied powers after World War II. You know, Western Europe and Asia are destroyed. The U.S. had emerged basically unscathed except for Pearl Harbor. And so why is it for 20 years after World War II the U.S. was so strong and the rest of the world was so weak? We'd like to think it was because we're great people, but it was because we didn't have to rebuild. Well, UVA, same situation, Coastal. UVA 8-5 last year, everybody coming back. Hey, you all of a sudden you're great, and everybody else is knocked down a couple pegs. Well, now you look at the Atlantic outside of Clemson. Let's forget Clemson. Clemson's on a different plane. But yeah, NC State. There's no reason they should have lost to West Virginia, much less lost the way they did. The Boston College, we've already covered that thoroughly. Syracuse now 1-2, 2 beatdowns in a row now. They're a team that you have to wonder if they're going to go 6-6 this year. The rest of that division, Louisville is 2-1, but it's an asterisk 2-1. You know, they played well against Notre Dame, but they haven't beaten anybody since. You know, so you look at that division and say the same thing. Hey, Wake Forest right now, they may not be a 9-3 quality team any other year, but this year they may be a 9-3 team because they'll lose to Clemson. They'll lose to somebody else, maybe two other somebody else that they're not supposed to lose to, but they're already 3-0, and they're not going to lose too much because everybody else in the Atlantic is so far down. So yeah, they could very well, Wake Forest could very well, and I think should be the odds-on favorite right this second to be number 2 in the Atlantic Division behind Clemson. And again, it's not necessarily that they're going to be a great team to get there, but you know, Dave Clawson has his team. They'll claw some games out. They'll win some games they're not supposed to win. They'll lose maybe 1 or 2 they're not supposed to lose. But yeah, I think they'll be there at that stage at the end of the season, and you have to tip your hat to them for being in that position.
Well, it's really interesting because the fun that I have with the Duke football schedule from the minute it comes out, and it changes each week. I have 4 columns. Column 1, we're going to lose this game. Column 2, we're going to be in over our heads this game. Column 3, it's a toss-up game. Column 4, we should win this game. And you're sitting there, and it's fun for me. And I've been doing this my whole life. And again, not most schools aren't like Duke, where you're going, man, we get 6 wins, we get to go to a bowl game. It's a different world to live in. But Chris, I got to tell you, a lot of teams, in my mind, have fallen into that middle category of, I think we can play with these guys. The Virginia Tech game, could very well, both teams have a bye week. Virginia Tech could very well rebound and beat Duke at home. But, I'm not going into the game thinking, oh, no, we have to play Virginia Tech. Syracuse, when they start out, they're ranked, and you're going, hey, these guys are pretty good. It's questionable. They did shut out Liberty 24-zip, but it wasn't like that their offense was explosive. And they've been non-competitive 2 straight weeks. So it's going to be interesting now. One of the thought processes, looking at the week 3 bowl projections, 4 different sites has Virginia playing Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. And that stuck out to me for 2 reasons. One, they really hate to have rematches, especially when you don't know how the game is being played. Yeah. Well, what's your thoughts on Virginia and Notre Dame 2 in the Orange Bowl?
Well, you talked about your baskets of games and everything else, and how should win or be competitive in that kind of thing. I do a similar thing with UVA football. Before the season, I thought Virginia would probably be a 10-2 team based on the schedule this year, and I felt absolutely crazy to think that, and I even wrote that, and I felt even crazier to write that, because when you write that and it's on the internet, it's there forever, and then somebody points out afterwards how wrong you were. They always do. People love to do that to me. But I stuck with it, 10-2. The other loss, I would have put Notre Dame as in that could lose, and I wouldn't put it should lose. I'll put it could lose column. I think, boy, you got to play ODU this weekend, but Notre Dame in 2 weeks, they're coming off of whatever they come off with Georgia. If you beat Georgia, the emotion of beating Georgia. If you lose to Georgia, you got to lick your wounds. You just lost to Georgia. Either way. You're coming off of having played Georgia, and Virginia, will come off hopefully a game that they can get, they can get the win, in hand, maybe without having to do too much exertion. No, hopefully no significant injuries. Maybe get some starters, some rest in the third quarter, fourth quarter, and so maybe slight advantage Virginia going into that game, but I'll still say Notre Dame's at home; they'll be favored. But the other one I had was Miami on the road. Oh, that don't scare me anymore. That there's so now I'm saying Virginia 11-1, and again I'm saying it out loud. I even you just heard me give some reasoning there for Notre Dame. I mean, I am an absolute village idiot for saying it out loud Virginia 12-0. So there you go. I just said it out loud. Whatever. I just said it. If let's just think ahead a little bit. You jumped ahead to the potential bowl matchups. But I was having this conversation with my good buddy Jay, college roommate, best man at my wedding. Saw him at the game the other night. We talked for an hour before the game. All right, so if Virginia goes 11-1, like I project could happen, if you're 11-1 going into Charlotte, if you're 11-1 Virginia, you're probably top 10. I mean, cause I'm really just dreaming now. So okay, just let me dream. But if you're 11-1 going into Charlotte, you're top 10. You're probably 8 or 9 in the country. Clemson's 12-0 because Clemson's Clemson. So ACC loves it because the primetime matchup is number 1 versus number 8. There are people talking leading up to that game. Hey, if Virginia wins this one, they're number 8 right now, but if they're 12-1 with a win over Clemson, you can't keep them out of the playoff. Holy crap. If that's the case, you're talking about a game in Charlotte for a potential chance at a playoff game. So, oh my God. So I thought that out loud. But you lose the game. Okay, whatever. You're playing in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame. That would be a great matchup for the bowl. Notre Dame travels their national team. Virginia fans would love to go to Miami in January to get away from the weather. And we've traveled. I'll say this. Our fan base does travel. I was in Minneapolis. There were thousands of Who's in Minneapolis as the noise level in U.S. Bank Stadium on Monday night indicates there were lots and lots and lots of fans in Minneapolis. There will be lots and lots of fans wherever we go this bowl season. They want to go to Miami. They want to go to playoff, actually, but they'll go to Miami as a consolation prize. So, no, that'd be a great fiscal matchup and the ACC has a great ton of the Orange Bowl. So, there might be some behind-the-scenes wrangling there if those two teams are in position to get that game. I could definitely see that happening, Jerry.
Well, Chris, it's interesting because, my wife asked me after she sees me reading 6 different sets of projections, and she said, how much stock can you put into this at this point? And I said, not a whole lot. I said, in reference to the Virginia Notre Dame projection, I said, we have to see how that first game plays out. If it's a great game, if it's a down-to-the-wire fourth quarter kind of game, sure, I could see people wanting to see a rematch of that game. But, I'm a little biased towards Georgia because my daughter's on the staff there. And, so, I just don't see Notre Dame playing with Georgia this weekend. I could be wrong. I don't feel as strongly about that as DeVaughn boldly predicted, but Georgia right now has had 3 games. So one of them was an SEC game. If you play a conference game and it's against a weaker opponent, there's nothing you can do about that. But they just basically had 2 weeks off. I think it was Murray State and Arkansas State. So they're going to come into this game ready to go. And game day will be down there. It's not that the game needed anything extra. I just don't know what kind of condition Notre Dame is in as it heads back home to South Bend to host Virginia. It'll be interesting because I'll give you an example. ESPN is the one place that has 2 people projected. And they very seldom agree on anything. And one of them had Duke going to the Sun Bowl, which is not only one of our bowls, but it's one of our higher tier bowls. And the other guy doesn't have us going at all. But he had Louisville and Florida State both winning 6 games.
Yeah, okay.
And in my mind, I'm going, who are they beating? It's going to be fun. And it's probably why it's my favorite time of the year. And as far as traveling for sports, for one, I'm so proud of the streak of having been to every bowl game Duke's played in my lifetime. When the season started, I told my wife, I said, yeah, we might have to just go down to Vegas this year and just watch the Vegas Bowl and let that be it. I don't think with this schedule we're going to get 6 wins. And you're looking at it now, and you're 3 weeks into it, and I'm going, wow. Not only do I think we're going to get 6, I'm not sure we can't get 7 or 8. And the problem with people projecting Duke out is they sign nobody. Nobody that's a 4-star recruit. So it's not like anybody has any idea who's down there. The freshman wideouts that they have had not caught it. They're all true freshmen. They're playing at a phenomenal level. They managed not to get hurt against Alabama, which was kind of a minor miracle. But the Duke game with Virginia Tech will go a long way, and I hope they can take care of business the same way that Virginia did with Florida State. I got a couple of other ones. Get your take from the baseball side of things. This one stuck out to me. Bichette's kid up in Toronto is in the dugout in the 12th inning. He's about to come to the plate. He's in the dugout in the 12th inning. I don't know how much he knows about the young man pitching, but he turns to his teammates and says, if this guy throws me a slider, I'm going to end the game. He comes out. The guy on the second pitch throws him a slider. Bichette ends the game with a walk-off home run. My question to you is, how often do you think something like that actually happens and plays out that way?
Plays out that way, a few times. I mean, guys are always, hitters go up to the plate looking for a pitch. That's one of the secrets of baseball. You can't. I mean, there are some people who, and they're unbelievably gifted people who can do this and do it successfully. Hitters who go up and just wait for the pitch or guess pitch to pitch. Most guys go up and say, all right, this guy's I'm going to wait for the slider. I'm going to wait for the fastball. I'm going to even zone it. I'm looking for a fastball away. I'm looking for a slider that comes in, whatever the case may be. And if they don't get it that at bat, they don't get it that at bat. Because you can't. I mean, the pitches are usually fastball is usually 8 to 10 miles per hour faster than your off-speed stuff. Your slider might sneak in a little faster than that, but your changeup, your curveball could be 15 miles slower. And there's no way you can be looking for. You can't be up there standing there waiting to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and then hit the 88-mile-per-hour changeup. You can't do both. You can do one. You can't do both. So, yeah, the idea that a guy says, I'm going to hit the slider out for the home run, that's a little bit of braggadocio, but it also tells you he's going up there looking slider, at least early in the count. Excuse me, coughing again. Maybe with 2 strikes, then you're just up there battling and see if you can keep it alive. Too many guys in this day and age strike out as much as so many people do, and they're still looking for the slider, and they might not get it, and they just strike out. But no, that doesn't. In one sense, it doesn't surprise me. The part where he's successful, that's probably a little bit of, I wouldn't say luck, because he's looking slider. So he's saying, if he's dumb enough to give me a slider, I'm going to take him deep. If he doesn't take him deep, he's going to fly out to the warning track, or he's going to hit a double, or hit a sharp single, or whatever he's going to do, line drive somewhere. But it's more a window into what he's looking for, and it just happened that he made happen what he said was going to happen.
One more baseball one for you real quick, and this one caught my story twofold. One, it was Pete Alonso that made the request. The Mets were playing a home game on September 11th, and Alonso, on behalf of the Mets, asked, hey, can we wear these special hats to honor the first responders? And Major League Baseball, and there was Joe Torre that had to come out and be the mouthpiece to it, saying, yeah, we can't let you do that. It just opens up too many can of worms, too many other people. Everybody has a reason to do something, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, the only thing they do in uniform is, Jackie Robinson's number. So the Mets go out, and after not getting to wear the hats they wanted to, they play the game. They win the game, Chris, 9-zip. And their line score, 9 runs on 11 hits. Now, that one blew me away, because it's not like you could project that out. It's not like in basketball or football you could run up a score or not run up a score. I just thought it was kind of amazing that they ended up with a line score of 9-11.
Can I say about Pete Alonso, please keep your shirt on. I don't know if you've seen this, Jerry, but he started something that he needs to end, or somebody needs to end. If a Met gets a walk-off hit, they do their post-game interview on TV with their shirt off. And Pete Alonso does not look good with his shirt off. He looks like a baseball player with his shirt off. He's not one of, like some baseball players, like when the Cincinnati Reds earlier this summer, they gave that old-timey Reds look, the 50s and 60s Reds uniform look where they had the sleeveless shirts on. And some of the guys wore T-shirts under, and some of the guys didn't. And there was one, the first baseman, I can't think of his name now, looks like he should be in a bodybuilding contest. He's got these arms like Hulk Hogan. These big, you can only call them pythons. His biceps look like pythons. And Pete Alonso does not look like that. He looks like somebody working in an office who takes his shirt off. Pete, keep your shirt on, and I'll root for you to hit more home runs. I'm glad he's using those lack of guns to hit home runs, but please, Pete, keep your shirt on.
I will. I'll make sure that that gets to him. I'm trying not to laugh as you were telling the story. Hey, also, kudos to my guy Cutcliffe. It was just announced that he's actually going to go into the Tennessee Hall of Fame this year. I was excited to hear that form from his days at Tennessee. Chris, the next one I had involves the WNBA again. They had their second round games this week, actually yesterday. So instead of like everybody else watching a lot of NFL football, I watched the doubleheader. But first, before we get to the game, they made an announcement that really impressed me, because this is something you and I have talked about. These games Sunday were being held in Las Vegas and LA. The two teams with the double byes, if you're picturing this geographically, are Connecticut and Washington, D.C. So whoever won their game on Sunday was going to have to get on a plane, fly across country, and get set up to play game one in the best 3 out of 5 on Tuesday. I just didn't see any way that was going to go over without a hitch. The WNBA stepped up and said, hey, we're going to try to correct this, and we're going to actually not only charter the planes, but we're going to pay for the planes so that these women can get across country, have a chance to be where they're supposed to be for a day, and play more competitive basketball on Tuesday. So I was really excited to see that. And then the ending of the Las Vegas-Chicago game was maybe the most bizarre end to a sporting event I've ever seen. And anybody out there listening that was watching SportsCenter last night, they got to see a couple of plays from it. But Chris has set it up. A couple of genius moves. Vegas had a comfortable lead, 5 points, had 6 straight empty possessions. Chicago takes a 1-point lead, and they have the ball, and Vegas has not committed enough fouls. So Chicago actually is trying to prevent being fouled. So they're running around in the backcourt. They go away from the basket. They're running away, trying to run the clock out. I go, wow, I haven't seen that too many times before. That's kind of brilliant. Well, then they finally catch up with her, and instead of letting herself get fouled, she threw the ball. And Vegas was actually able to intercept the pass at midcourt. So all of this is going on. Nobody knows how much time's left. Derek Hamby, who just got named the 6th person of the year earlier in the day, steals the pass, has a teammate under the basket. They're down 2. She has a teammate under the basket. All she's got to do is toss the ball to her. She mistakes how much time's left in the game, and she throws up a shot from just past half court. Shot goes in, 3-pointer. They win the game. And they're talking about the fact that she did that with 7 seconds to go on the clock. And they were making all sorts of comparisons to J.R. Smith and some of the blunders that he's made. But it was a really chaotic finish. But the fact that she switched the shots, and they measured it off the best they could from saying it was a 38-foot shot. So it was just inside half court. But what a crazy ending that sends Vegas to Washington and Los Angeles to Connecticut for the semifinals, which start on Tuesday night. And it was pretty cool because 2 plays in that game. Obviously, that shot was the number 1 on the top 10 list, but looking forward to the semifinals starting Tuesday. I love the fact that they're getting to actually fly there. Again, Liz Cambage is 6'8". I'm not sure how much she would have liked sitting on the coach seating on the regular plane. So kudos there for the league stepping up. Chris, I need to ask you, last time we got together, we were dumbfounded about Colangelo and his comments concerning the world team. And we haven't heard anything more from Jerry, but Pop came out and spoke. I wanted to know what your take was on his comments.
His comments to the effect that critics should be quiet. I think is probably what you're talking about there. I don't disagree. I've been saying since we started talking about the construction of the roster that ended up going to China to play the World Cup, that it wasn't going to win. I can't tell you that I thought they were not going to medal, but I can tell you I knew they weren't going to win the gold. And it's casting no aspersions on the men who went and played. And also, I made it my thoughts clear on this early on too, that I don't blame the NBA superstars, the Hardens, the Currys, all those guys who didn't play because of the nature of the fact that it's back-to-back seasons. It used to be it was a 2-year cycle. The World Championships were played, and then 2 years later the Olympics were played. So I think I can agree with Pop actually say that if you want to say U.S. basketball is in crisis, I think it's sports talk people who just don't have enough to talk about apparently, and there's plenty to talk about. But this is making a lot out of nothing. We're not going to send that same team to the Olympics next year. We're going to send the NBA All First Team and the NBA All Second Team to the Olympics next year. And so, they still got to go play basketball and win games. But, this group, God love them, they went and represented, and they were undefeated going into the knockout part of it, and they lost games. But this team was not going to win the gold medal. The other countries, by and large, sent their best groups there, and we didn't. And again, no offense to those. Joe Harris is on the team. Joe Harris is a UVA guy. Joe Harris is not going to be on the team next year. I love Joe Harris. He's not going to be on that team next year. Plumlee's not going to be on that team next year. There are a lot of guys on this team, but they're not going to be close to that team next year. They represented us this year. Their job was to, quote-unquote, qualify us for the Tokyo Games. They did, and so they did their job. And credit to them for doing that. And everybody who wants to criticize this group for somehow failing, I think they achieved exactly what they should have achieved and what I expect them to achieve, which was they went 6-2. I think that's pretty good for this group.
Well, kudos to Spain for actually winning the championship. And the one thing about Pop is whether you like him or not, he's going to tell you exactly what he's thinking. Now, a lot of people think he's put offish or standoffish, but he's always been blunt. But now that we've dissected Colangelo's comments and then Pop's next to it, does it make Colangelo's comments even more dumbfounding?
Yeah, it does, because the right answer is Pop's answer, and the perspective that the guys who went represented us well. They achieved what they were supposed to achieve. I mean, I still think what Colangelo was really doing. I do think I agree with the Richard Jeffersons of the world who say he wasn't directing his comments towards the Currys and the Hardens. He was talking more to the young guys who are emerging type stars, who maybe don't have the international experience that some of the older veteran guys do, who could have benefited from this. And I've read comments from NBA coaches who say that when they sent young guys over in past cycles, World Championship cycles, Olympic cycles, not only did that international experience help them the next time they played internationally, but it also helped them when they went back to the NBA and their NBA teams. And so I think that the message probably was more towards some of the younger stars who don't have the international experience, that one, you could have made yourself a better player for the NBA team by going and doing this, and two, you certainly could have made yourself a better representative of Team USA next year. If we read that as criticism of the stars, that would be different. I don't read it that way, though. The more I've thought about it, the more I've kind of read into that. I don't think he's criticizing the top-level guys, but I do think that some of the guys who are maybe the next Hardens, the next Currys, the next Durants, could have benefited from this experience, and you're asking those guys to maybe invest a little bit. Yes, it's asking a lot. You got to play, you got to give up your summer this year. You got to play your whole NBA season, give up your summer next year. It's asking a lot, and then play another whole season next year. It's asking a lot, but if you're a committed professional and you want to get better, get better, and that's one way to get better.
Okay, so to wrap up the World Games, we looked at it, both other guys making the comments. Let's go back just for a second and revisit the one thing we talked about earlier, was that Carmelo Anthony was trying to play on this team. Is there anything do you still feel that with a limited number of people that made themselves available, my understanding is through the entire process, they cut 2 players. Do we have any final thoughts on Carmelo as far as should he have at least been offered the opportunity to try out for the team?
I think the silence of the NBA teams who still haven't jumped on the Carmelo Anthony bandwagon in terms of inviting him to camp, I think that speaks as to whether or not he should have been invited to this camp. If he can't even get an invite to a team training camp, which I don't think he has as of this stage. I hope I'm not wrong on that when I say that. But if he can't get that invite, I don't think you get the invite to the bigger team. I mean, he's Carmelo, but no, and I'm not rooting against Carmelo to get an invite to a training camp. But boy, if whatever issue is holding him up from getting that invite, um, either there's a feeling among general managers that he's not something as a player is not there that could have been there before, that was there before, is not there, or there's a feeling that he may be a distraction as a locker room presence, chemistry kind of things, or both. I mean, I think the market is speaking, to use economic terms, the market seems to be speaking on Carmelo Anthony. And I mean, it would have been great for him to have been able to showcase his talents, but maybe there's a feeling that there's just not a lot left there in the tank for Carmelo.
Last NBA-related question I've got for you came across the wire recently that LeBron James has went to the Lakers and said, run our offense through Anthony Davis, not me. So, taking that for what it's worth, let's assume he actually said it. A, is that a shock of any type? And B, do you see it actually happening that way?
If he said it, at first, I'm thinking, what's my thought on that? Well, the thought on that will be, if he said it, it's a concession, one, that he realizes I think he's 35 going into the season, 34, 35, so I think he's 35 going into the season, or will be 35 during the season, if not. I'm LeBron, I'm older, so, okay, there's that, and Anthony's a lot younger, a lot more dynamic physically than is Anthony Davis at his prime better than LeBron James in his prime? No, but LeBron James is not in his prime anymore. And so what that would be a concession, it would be sort of like, okay, maybe he learned from Dwayne Wade, you know what? Maybe I need to be Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan here, and Dwayne Wade did that so well with that group when LeBron was with Miami. The star became the Robin to Batman, and they were successful as a result of that. And so this, if he said that, it wouldn't surprise me at all. In fact, the more I think about it, if he doesn't say it, he better say it, because you can't have sort of two suns in your solar system. Your planets can only revolve around one, and Davis at this stage in their two respective careers at this point in time in 2019, he's the gravitational force I would want to orbit around. And if you're fortunate, if you're the Lakers and you're fortunate enough to have a LeBron James saying, I will be Dwayne Wade, I will be Scottie Pippen, I will be Robin to Batman, that's gonna work. I don't know that having two guys trying to be the alpha is going to work. And LeBron James now, he's also, like Dwayne Wade, like Scottie Pippen, a guy who can be very effective in that role. He's a guy that, even when he is the star of the team, averages 8-9 assists a game. He's always a guy who's despite the fact that he could have easily taken over and been a guy like a Harden. I mean, all this talk about a Harden, and he scored 36 a game last year. Well, if other guys like LeBron and like some other top tier guys decide to shoot the ball as much as James Harden does, they'll score 36 too. But LeBron's always been a guy who makes his teammates better, and then he himself as a result is better. I think he can be very effective in that role. So I think that's actually I think that's a great sign for the Lakers heading into the season.
Well, Chris, we got to go full circle. We started out with UVA. We talked about the experience, the game, the crowd. This week would fall into what most people consider a possible trap game. You're in between Florida State and Notre Dame. You've got ODU. How many people would you like to see? Again, there's no way to guarantee it. How many people would you like to see show up for the Monarch game? And give me your thoughts on what they're going to accomplish this weekend.
This is anecdotal, so everything's anecdotal, I guess, to a degree. But my buddy Jay that I referenced earlier, that I talked with for an hour before the game, he had not been to a game since 2013. He had not been to a UVA football game since 2013. He's coming back Saturday night. So I think what we might be seeing there, and UVA, my wife Crystal is she's now a Virginia Athletics Foundation donor. She did that to get access to UVA basketball season tickets, but as the VAF donor in our household, she's been swamped with messages today from UVA Athletics trying to sell her season tickets. So it tells you that UVA thinks that win the other night is going to generate some more season ticket sales. My buddy Jay, coming to his second game in 6 years in back-to-back weeks, tells you that there are some people who probably had a good time last week and can't wait to go back out and have another good time this week. I think it'll. I don't know that it won't be as many as last week, but I mean, I say that, and who knows? The environment last Saturday night was, the best environment that I've seen at a UVA football game, dating back to probably 2004, back in the early years of the Al Groh era. There was a game. UVA played Miami in November that year. They were both top 10 teams. That I will compare, and that was a night game on a Saturday night. I will compare the atmosphere this past Saturday night to the one 2004. Really, in the fourth quarter, when Virginia took the lead, and then Florida State had the ball, that was loud. That was 57,000 people screaming their full heads off for a good 20 minutes. And then, I felt like that the running on the field after the game, which you've seen some people criticize, and those people can just go to heck because sports are supposed to be fun and people were having fun. I took that as, boy, the way that game ended was so reminiscent for those of us who were there in 1995. Work done, taking a direct snap in that very part of the field. I mean, the very part of the turf on Scott Stadium Field. He took a direct snap at about the 6-yard line. This was a direct snap from the 4-yard line. Getting tackled at the 1.5-yard line. This tackle was at the 4-yard line. But, man, there were so many parallels from 24 years ago. That was a great moment. And so, Virginia's fortunate now. We're playing night games. This will be the 4th straight night game that Virginia football is playing. We used to play at 12 o'clock every Saturday. They put the teams at 12 o'clock, generally speaking. Not every time, but 12 o'clock usually is the time of day when the teams who they're not ready for prime time. 7 o'clock, we didn't play a prime time game for years. Now we're playing our 4th straight. So I expect a good crowd. And, it's a trap game. But I don't know the way Bronco Mendenhall coaches his team that there's a possibility of a trap game. He's an intense guy. He makes you earn your number. You don't get a number just handed to you. You have to earn your number, and you stand in line picking your number out based on how you achieve certain preseason fitness objectives. A guy who coaches like that, a guy who doesn't give you your number until you can run a shuttle run this fast, you can do a squat, you can do a bench press of this number. A guy who says that, I don't think there's a trap game for a team that plays for a guy like that. So I think that they'll be fine Saturday night. Hope there's a good crowd. And I've got double duty. It's going to be a fun day for me, too, because I've got VMI football broadcast, a 1:30 kickoff. That game will end about 4:45. I get in the car, head back up to Waynesboro, and then pretty much pick up my wife. We go to Charlottesville for a 7 o'clock kick. VMI football, 2-1, won at East Tennessee State this past weekend on the road in SoCon play. First SoCon road win in 10 years. VMI is looking for their 3rd win of the season. They'll be a win over Mars Hill. They're 3-1. I got a fun day coming up Saturday, so don't be jealous, but I'm going to have a lot of fun talking about, writing about, enjoying football this coming Saturday.
Well, we're going to call last weekend one of the greatest weekends in UVA sports history for a number of reasons, and let's just hope the momentum keeps going forward. Chris, I'm already looking forward to getting back together on Friday and set it all up for next weekend.
And I'm already making myself tired thinking about how fun Saturday is going to be after this past weekend of fun. I'm still recovering, too. So, but yeah, this is a lot of fun. Jerry, thank you for your time. Our listeners, thank you for joining us. And any comments, questions, you can tweet me at AugFreePress. Email me, AugustaFreePress2@gmail.com. I've gotten a lot of emails actually this weekend from our coverage of the events on Friday and Saturday. So thanks for your emails, and look forward to talking to you again soon.